Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the White Belt MMA podcast, and it's an absolute pleasure to have on the show today UFC flyweight Miranda Maverick. How you doing, Miranda?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, definitely. So, Miranda, before we go into your fight career, as a fellow college student, I have so much respect for you, especially double majoring in psychology and sociology, and then now you're going for your PhD at Old Dominion. So, I have to ask is how's the semester going? Because for me, like it's coming down like the last stretch, and I'll be honest, I'm stressed out. So I want to know for you, especially you getting your PhD. So how are you feeling?
I'm very stressed out, actually. It's kind of the last few weeks for me, too, for these classes at least. And then we start back up again. But yeah, it gets pretty difficult these last few weeks, especially once I introduce training back into it. I've been taking it easy on training the last couple weeks. Going to get started back up on Monday. But yeah, to say the least, I don't know if I'm running behind, but I'm definitely not ahead. Doing my best to keep up with everything.
Yeah, and I'm guessing they're all virtual as well, because like on my end they're all virtual, but I know some schools are kind of like implementing like half of the week it's virtual, the other half it's in person. So how's that going for you?
This one is all virtual for me personally. I know some classes are in person, but all virtual for me. I still go to my desk, though, at my office on the university, so I can get some quiet time to work sometimes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. For Miranda, like now I kind of want to go back all the way to the beginning of your career, or just in general for you martial arts. Because the thing is, like, I have a lot of fighters on the show, and like I always like to ask them, like, how did they get introduced to martial arts in the first place? So for you, like, what was your story? What made you want to get into martial arts? And yeah.
For me, like I grew up roughhousing and wrestling around with my siblings and my dad, and I grew up on a farm, so I was always really strong. Always had a lot of musculature growing up. And then once I got into sports, of course, I was pretty good at every sport, but never the best at any sport. And found jujitsu after learning about it a little bit from my dad and him teaching me techniques and us watching the UFC. To be honest, was not interested in fighting at first. It was just simply a self defense sport of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu that I wanted to try. Started doing it. I can't help but be competitive. It's part of my nature. Started beating up everybody in practice and then doing competitions and winning. And decided after watching some Amy fights that I thought were embarrassing that I would try fighting.
Yeah, so like like you said, you wanted to try fighting. So and then your first amateur fight was at 18. I mean, for me, the last thing I remember is at 18 that I was doing. I was probably just watching Netflix or anything like that. So you went right into amateur fighting. So, how was that? Because I'm guessing it. Obviously jujitsu and then MMA, it's obviously two different things, two different type of nerves. So, how were the nerves in your first fight?
They were definitely there. My first fight was one of those things where I talked to my dad about it, and I was like, if two things happen, if I win and I like that feeling of beating up somebody, then I'll go be the best that I can be and try to be world champion. If I lose and or I don't like the feeling of hurting someone or punching someone or getting punched in the face myself, I would never do it again. Went in there, blacked out basically during the fight. I didn't even remember the actual actions that happened within the fight. I only knew I had won afterwards. And I was nervous, but at the same time, so excited. And that high is unlike any other high that I did again and again. And I told myself that I was going to turn pro by the time I turned 19. And I actually signed a contract with Invicta, I think like 3 weeks before I turned 19.
Yeah, so like during that whole stretch, right, for like amateur to pro, and like you said, you set up that goal for yourself. I'm guessing the people back home, but I mean, I know your dad was a big supporter of it, but like the people around you, like besides your dad, what did they think about it? Like, did your friends kind of give you the side eye, be like, you want to go into fighting, or was it
Yeah,
one of those like everyone was like on board and full support?
I wouldn't say everybody was on board, but a lot of people already knew I was strong. They already knew I was doing jujitsu and thought that was weird to begin with. When I fought, like some people were like, "Are you sure you want to do that with your life?" Especially like older people in my life, I guess. They were more along the lines of that's barbaric and that's, the stereotype. They were
Yeah.
applying the stereotype to me. But my family was very supportive, and that's really all that mattered to me. And so I went for it. And, in my eyes, I was like, maybe I can make it big one day. Maybe this could be my road to success, even though, thinking back 5 years ago, there's no way I would have ever told you I'd be a professional athlete. I never was one of those kids that was like, I want to be a professional athlete when I grew up. Like, that was never a thing. And to have that happen along with my other dreams that I had at the same time has been an incredible journey for me.
Yeah, and like you said, it's like, it was never a dream for you at first to be a fighter and like stuff like that. And then like we mentioned earlier about your academic career, for some people, they would pick a path and they would put all their eggs on one basket, but you decided to stay, in school and everything like that. So, what was behind this decision there of like staying in your school, double majoring, and then now getting your PhD? So like, what was the thought process behind that and, still training as a fighter?
Well, I feel like everybody always is like, you're so young, enjoy life, take your time with school, take your time with fighting. And to me, that's always been so false, so stupid. I'm like, you have youth for only a certain amount of time. You might as well make the most of it. Me getting 3 hours of sleep now is not going to be the same as me getting 3 hours of sleep when I'm 40 years old with children running around. Like you need to make sure that you use your time wisely. And so that's what I've tried to do. And I knew that I could be successful. I've been good in academics. I've been given talents and potential to use it, not to sit around and waste it and say how society has directed me certain ways, so I should just listen to them. My biggest thing is to reach that potential. I made sure that I worked hard on both aspects. Of course, I do think I could be better at fighting if I didn't have the school on the side, and vice versa, but I'm trying to get both done at the same time. And right now it's looking like pretty bright horizons for me in both aspects.
Yeah, definitely. And like I told you at the beginning, I give you so much respect because for me, I'm still in my undergraduate career and I'm just majoring in communications and then minoring in professional news media. And like, I'm kind of like, I'm pulling my hairs out. So for you, like to, be a full-time fighter and then also be in school, like I said, mad respect.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think there's also the aspect of I've watched all these other fighters and athletes that once they're done with their career, they don't do anything with their lives, like, or they don't have another opportunity. They're struggling along. People forget who they are and they're done. They're going back to a regular 9 to 5 job and whatever else. And I don't want to be that person. I want to have the educational background to where I can jump right back into something else if I want to where if I get a knee injury or an eye injury again, or something that's absolutely threatening in martial arts, or maybe even if I'm like, I'm done,
Mm.
like I can actually just say I'm done instead of having to struggle along until I have to retire from losing so much. And it's a young person's sport. You're not going to be in MMA doing very well when you're 40 years old. And I also don't want to be doing it until then anyway. I want to
Yeah.
have a family. I want to be able to focus on that at some point in my life.
Yeah, definitely, and beautifully said. So to kind of bring it back into your, like I said, to more into your career. I've been meaning to ask you this, especially when I was like looking down your record, and then there was a couple of fights that like they happened on the same day, and I know it was for the Invicta tournament. So like, uh, explain that. So it's one of those things. It's like normally you would have a fight, and then after that you would have like another fight, a couple weeks out, or a couple months out. But for you, you had a couple fights on the same day. So what were the feelings around like that? Like, was it kind of like a jujitsu tournament that you're like, what I mean, next one on the mat, or it's kind of one of those like, oh man, I need to rest up a little bit because like this is pretty tough.
It's definitely more intense than jujitsu match. Jujitsu matches, I joke now. I literally sleep on the sidelines, do my jujitsu real quick. Like um, it's such a lower intensity thing for me now that I've done MMA. But that tournament was actually very intense. One of my biggest trademarks, I guess you'd say, as a fighter at that point, which I've learned to mature a little bit and have a little bit more stability emotionally. But I used to be just so passionate and so emotional after my fights because that was my life. This is my dream I'm living, and it takes everything in me not to just start bawling, crying after my UFC fights too. But I've learned to get past that. But back then, the thing was, you have 3 fights potentially in a night. You can't start cheering and let your adrenaline out that first fight or the second. So I just saw it as a 3 round fight, is basically how I envisioned it in my brain. And I was like, all right, first fight, go in there, get a takedown, win. Didn't happen. I went to a decision, still won. Second fight, okay, go in, get a takedown, win. Did do that. Got a submission, ended it early. Thank goodness. Then the third fight, I was like, all right, this is a full fight. So now you've got 2 fights and a full fight. But this one counted as like the last round. And I went in there and not only won, but I also beat somebody who had already beat me previously.
Mm.
So it was very exciting for me. It really kind of frustrated me that they didn't count as 3 actual wins. They count as 2 exhibition bouts. I don't know what to think though, because the UFC announces me as like 10-2,
Yeah.
11-2. But then on the website it says something else. I'm going with the highest number because
Yeah, I mean, you went through hell on those, like, like you said, whatever, there were still fights, so they should still be counted on your record. So like Miranda, like I said, like, hey, I would do the same thing if I was in your shoes. So, but yeah. So then, like, I was watching a couple of your other interviews, and then you also mentioned that, like, obviously you had your UFC debut, but then you had a couple, call ups from the UFC beforehand. So, for most people, they would get a call from the UFC and they'll just jump on the opportunity. But for you, like, why did you decide to not, like, jump at the first opportunity? Or, if not, were there anything that were kind of like anything that kind of like stopped you from taking that?
I think it was all about knowing my worth, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest. The first time I got a call was against Antonia Shevchenko on a 3-day notice. Back when I was like 20 years old. I think I was like 3-0 in the Invicta, like barely just getting started, and I knew that once I got in there, like I was only getting a 1 fight offer. And that just means, honestly, like, to put it in crude words, you're just coming in there to lose, and then so they forget about you, like,
Mm-hmm.
after that. And I wanted to be hyped into the sport. I wanted to be wanted, like,
Yeah.
I knew that I was very young and that I had a lot of room to improve. And I honestly didn't think I could hang with the girls at the top 10 in the world. Guess what? Now I can. I've learned a lot over the last 2.5, 3 years, and I knew that that would be the case. So I just waited until the time was right, until I could actually make weight. I wouldn't have made weight. I would have had 1 fight. I would have potentially lost, and then I would have been set back another like year of my life.
Yeah.
What's the point in that? So I turned down that one. I turned down one that was above my weight class. I turned down another one that was short notice. I took a couple during COVID that just didn't pan out. I took one that was going to be the first fight without an audience. Um, that one I can't even remember why it fell through, but it wasn't my fault. Something happened. It just didn't work out. Then I finally took an offer when I got a 4-fight contract, because it means I had a sealed deal in the UFC regardless of that outcome. And it was a good matchup against Mara Barella, I think it was. And so I took that fight, got all the way to Vegas, passed all my medicals, and then I had one more medical left that had to wait for Vegas because of the short notice. And it was my eye exam. Got down there, did not pass the eye exam, found out I had 2 torn retinas. I had no idea. It almost, honestly, that next 2 weeks was the worst period of my life. I was very depressed, very down, was told by 3 different surgeons that I would never fight again, never do any physical activities again, and that there was about a 40% chance I would be blind. So me, my brand new boyfriend at the time was still with me. My mom, my dad, everybody was very scared for me that knew about it. We kept it very close knit though, and ended up finding another surgeon who had actually done the same exact surgeries on some other younger people, because it's usually an older person problem, and you don't have to worry about them going and getting punched in the eyeballs.
Yeah.
But I ended up getting the surgery. She cleared me and got right back to fighting. Got my debut finally in October against Liana Jojua in Abu Dhabi. That was an exciting experience. Came back, tried to fight Jillian a couple times. The previous time she had dropped out from getting sick day of. Then the time before that, like, our schedules didn't work. And this last time, obviously, went in there, fought, finally got it done.
Yeah, and then, like, I also wanted to ask you, like, I've been watching your other interviews, and then you also said that, like, in your first fight, you kind of had like the nervous jitters when Bruce Buffer like announced your name. So, like, from having a lifelong dream, like, not a lifelong dream, but like a big dream of yours that you wanted to fight in the UFC, like, how did that feel? Because I know you said you had the nervous jitters, but like, besides that, like, what were your other feelings behind that?
Yeah, well, there were only 3 times in my career I can think of I got nervous. My very first amateur fight where I blacked out. My second pro fight, actually, not my first, where I was going against a girl who was very hyped up and had just beat a phenomenal fighter. So they were like, "Oh, this girl's so badass," and I was nervous myself because she also looked really like
Yeah.
stocky, and everything else. And then that first UFC fight, there's just nothing like it, because it is the dream. In my mind, that's what I've worked every single day for, hours per day, gotten my nutrition right for 5 years. That was the goal. It wasn't Invicta. It wasn't, become a pro, nothing. It was, let me be able to make a living fighting. And when I got into the UFC, to be honest, I still can't make a living until about right now. I'm getting to the point where I'm comfortably making a living with fighting if I fight regularly. But even at that point, it was like that pinnacle. It was that road to the top. If I win this fight, boom, I'm there, where I want to be. That goal is getting accomplished. So yeah, it just hadn't hit reality, even
Yeah.
the previous time I was in Vegas, even the time leading up to the fight, the warm-up room, all of it. It was just like, this is whatever. This is whatever. And then you get in there and Bruce Buffer called my name and I was like, oh my goodness. Okay, it's happening. It's happening. This is real.
Yeah.
And yeah, for about 30 seconds, I was kind of just nervous and it took me a minute to get my grip.
Yeah. So I mean, hey, like you said, you ended up winning the fight in like, dominating fashion, doctor stoppage, but you still won the fight. Like I said, it's like you said in other interviews, like it would have gotten really bad for her in round two because it was definitely going to that momentum. So your Jillian Robertson fight, it was just recently on March 27th on the Francis Ngannou and Stipe Miocic card, and honestly, I feel like that's the first fight that everyone started taking notice for you. I mean, for me as a hardcore fan, like I've been hearing your name for a while, so it's like I knew that you were gonna put a dominant performance in that fight. So for you, like there were some moments that Jillian put you in some bad spots. So like what was going through your mind in those situations? Was it kind of one of those just like preparation kind of led me to this, and then I'll be good and I'll be able to get out of this, or how was that? How was the whole fight for you?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I never felt in danger. When
Mm,
I say that, of course, there's times where I recognize, oh no, I'm getting this position, but never a time where I was like, oh no, like alarmed that I wasn't going to get out.
yeah.
Uh, I knew I was dominating her on the feet. She never even touched me. I can think of one punch she actually landed. It's not where my black eye's from, by the way. It's from a headbutt when I got in too close to her that didn't show up until a day later. I like got in too close with my punches. But I made a lot of mistakes in that fight. One, people need to understand I'm young. Two, they need to understand that it's my second fight in the UFC. There are still not only slight nerves, but Jillian's good. She's
Yeah.
going to make somebody look bad in certain positions. Jillian's very good on the ground. And I felt very confident taking her to the ground. I had a better wrestling than her. I would say that her jujitsu is a bit more technical than mine. That's the one thing I will give her. She is a black belt. I'm a brown belt. And that really doesn't mean anything when somebody's punching you in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I showed that a little bit when I was able to out grapple her in round three. I think that was just a flip of the switch in my mind of, okay, I'm safe. She wasn't able to do anything in round two to me. Let's go. In round two, she got a good takedown. She did very smart thing, got behind my back, and instead of trying to take me down like a traditional wrestler, she just set me back,
Mm-hmm.
which was smart because I was ready for a different kind of defense. And she attacked my back, attacked my neck, but I was aware that that was what she was going for, and she
Yeah.
never did damage. Honestly, if she had thrown some punches and stuff, it might have been a little bit more worrying. But I was able to defend myself, and I should have put my feet on the ground a little bit sooner to get back up. But I didn't. I was just defensive and made sure that I was safe instead. Going back, I would change that a little bit. Then in round three, some people were worried she had that arm bar, but that was like nowhere close. If
Yeah.
anybody knows jujitsu, I was
Yeah.
never threatened at all. I had my hands where they need to be to defend, and honestly felt so much stronger than her, which isn't a huge part of jujitsu, but it matters when you're almost of equal skill level.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I was able to almost bend my arm back to where I needed it to be, got out, flipped over, and ended up on top in an awkward reverse mount. But I felt good in that fight, but I'm taking it as a loss, honestly. Like every mistake I made in there, I need to learn from. I don't have to lose to learn. They
Mm-hmm.
always say, win or you learn. What does that mean? When you win, you can't learn anything? Like
Yeah.
that's stupid. So I'm going back to the drawing board, making sure I fix every problem. And I think I've shown before I improve a lot in between each fight. And it's because of that mindset. I'm not satisfied with what I do.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, that's the mindset why everyone starting to get on your bandwagon, or people that already been on your bandwagon. That's why they like you so much because, like I said, it's like you're always striving to be better. And after your fight against Jillian Robertson, just short weeks after, there's word that you're facing Macy Barber on July 24th. So like for you, like especially for 2021, like was that the goal that you want to be as active as possible, or it was just opportunity that just came and then you're like, yeah, I'm gonna take it.
A little bit of both. I want to be as active as possible, but as possible isn't as possible as I wish it could be, like school does get in the way.
Yeah.
Like for instance, I'm not going to be going through a fight camp in the next 3 weeks. I can't do it. I can't keep up. I made a vital mistake of almost doing that last semester during Christmas when I almost took the first fight with Jillian, actually. That was very rough for me. Even the first fight we were supposed to have, and that's what even added fuel to the fire. I was so mad that I had worked so hard to go through that fight camp all for basically nothing. I improved though during that
Mm,
fight camp. That was the takeaway, but it was still really irritating. I put away school. I had said, all right, I'm gonna focus on this and then I'll be able to focus on school, and then another 4-week fight camp, and not being able to focus on school as much as I needed to. So school does get in the way. I try to schedule around that. Of course, there's a few weeks I'd like to take off for summer to spend time with my family. Like, there's always times I want to have, but yes, I'm trying to stay active, trying to make sure that I don't just allow the hype train of what people say about me, like, oh, Miranda's ranked this, she's this good. Like, I want to go in and prove it every time I fight.
yeah, definitely. And then, awesome. So like, for you, like, last question, like, we kind of like, talked about a little bit there about, 2021 being as active as possible, and, obviously, making sure that, you still have time to kind of relax a little bit. But, besides that, like, in your academic and professional career, like, what are your goals for 2021?
uh top 10, hopefully. We'll see how it works out. I want to get this Macy fight out of the way, and then one more fight is what I'm thinking.
Mm,
But that being mentioned, I don't want to be rushed to the title. People are always saying that, and I do agree. I think sometimes they rush people too quickly. Even Macy, way back when, she was so hyped that they tried to just boom 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 put her up
yeah.
to the top. Ended up being a detriment for her. She's young as well, and people are there like, oh, she's overrated. I'm gonna be respectful to Macy here and say bullshit. She's very young. Yes, she may have been overrated as far as where her talent was at that point, but she's got a lot of room to grow.
Mm-hmm.
We're nowhere near our primes, either one of us, and she's a little bit younger than me, which is crazy. I've never fought anyone younger than me ever, or within 2 years. I think Liana is the youngest person I've ever fought. So that's going to be an interesting difference for me, but it's not going to matter in the fight, obviously. Um, but the same as Macy, I have a lot to learn from, and it's just going to be exciting. I'm excited.
Yeah, definitely. So, Miranda, like I said, at the beginning, once again, I really appreciate the time. I know you're really busy, especially going through the home stretch of the semester. So, I really appreciate the time, Miranda. So, before you go, do you want to, plug in your social media so everyone watching can go and follow you?
Yeah, please. My Instagram is where most people go and try to follow me. It's at Fear the Maverick _HOMT. My management is LCA Sports Management. If you guys want to contact for sponsors, even contact for interviews, you can set it up through them. That's the best way to reach me, or through Instagram. I have merchandise for sale, and more stuff will be coming out soon. I'll have a website out soon as well, which I'm really excited about.
Awesome. So, Miranda, thank you. And then hopefully we can do this, once again later on in the future when you're, less busy, because I know right now you just have so much on your plate. So, Miranda, once again, thank you. And to everyone watching, peace.